Oh, yeah, yeah. How are we doing, people? Hope everyone's doing absolutely amazing. It's a nice Sunday evening here. How is everyone? How's everyone doing? Hope everyone's doing very good. Always recycle the paper right on the back. That's the way it works. And let's see if anyone's awake at this time of day. I thought I'd try in the evening, and we'll see if people are around. And we can have a chat, and that would be good. So, how are people doing? I've had a productive day, made some videos. I'm going to make another one. It's going to be just awesome, just going to be amazing. How are you? Are you people feeling good? What's happening in your life? Now, I'm going to make a video coming up about some really good books you can have, in your library, and really entertaining ancient mysteries books. And there are books such as, well, I'm currently at Mum's place, but I'm not at my place with my library, but just books I have here. The Spear of Destiny, Trevor Ravenscroft, one of the most amazing, interesting books you've ever seen. It's a book that you can't stop reading. In addition, Aku Aku. Aku Aku is just an extraordinary book. It's really entertaining. Torhadel essentially brainwashes an entire island. And what happens is he gets the people, the islanders, to hand over all their artifacts, all their precious, priceless information and artifacts, and all from their ancestral tombs. And he basically plunders the island, and he takes it to a museum in Indonesia. It's unbelievable. Matthew Thomas, hey Matthew, frying sausage, potatoes, and eggs, are you? Coffee and chia tea for the missus. Nice. That sounds awesome. Nice. Sounds lovely. Now, another cool book, it's a really good book, a really interesting book, The Cycle of Cosmic Catastrophes. And this book is something that's really hard to put down at the start. The first half is brilliant. The second half, it ain't so good. It's really not the greatest book to read. It's okay. Now, what happens is they say a star exploded. Haiku question stuff. They say a star exploded nearby, about 30 light years away, and what happened is it deposited a black layer of buckyballs all around golf courses and stuff around, and they're looking at golf courses for sediments. They're looking for this buckyball sediment and at the Carolina Bays, and there's some of the Carolina Bays are now golf courses. They go around looking for the sediment from this ancient catastrophe, and they find a bit of comet, a tiny bit of loose, very light rock, and they take it to a geologist, and the geologist says, I don't know what that is. I've got no idea what that is. I've never seen that rock before. And they reckon it's a bit of a comet. And it's so entertaining at the start when they're looking for evidence of this cosmic impact. And they essentially talk about when the event happened. Firstly, there's a radiation event, a blast that happens where you have a sudden radiation blast about 41,000 years before present. And so first there's a radiation blast, then there's a plasma attack on the Earth, and then after that, what happens is you get to the heavier things start hitting the Earth, which is about 10,000 years ago. You have the rocks and things hitting the Earth. And so therefore it's a cycle of catastrophes, which is quite interesting. Now, I don't believe that at all. I don't believe that because it's too far away. How can a supernova unleash all these catastrophes on the Earth if they're not taking into consideration, and they never do in the book, the inverse square law? They never take it into consideration. It's just not very good thing. It's not a very good theory. I don't like it as a theory. I really cannot agree with it as a theory. It's just not the best. And they never look at that. But there was a cosmic bombardment. Even on the Carolina Bays, as you can see, have impacts like this. You see similar things on the moon. That one there is on the moon. And it's so interesting. It's so interesting. So I'll have to say hi to some people. So Mitch says Yellowstone explosion soon. Mitch, what's going on with that? Are you planning something, Mitch? Hey, be careful. So Rodney Thomas says 1:37 a.m. in Southern Cal, drinking a beer and watching. Nice. Hi Thomas. Hi Rodney. Sorry. I'll tell you the time here. It's 6:40 p.m. and it's I think it's Sunday. Yeah. Bad Bug says hello from Cumbria, England. Hello, Bad Bug. And Meister Jodler says hello. How you doing? Yeah. So yeah, that's nice. So Mitch says Yellowstone's going nuts for a while. Is it? Like, what's happening with Yellowstone? Is that going to pop? I didn't know, but isn't it always going nuts? Isn't it always threatening to pop and blow its top? And so we had a geology professor, 20 years ago when I did a subject on geology, and he said if Yellowstone goes, the whole US goes, and when the US goes, the whole world economy will go, and it will probably go soon because it's overdue for an eruption. So it's going to happen. So yeah, it's going to be terrible. It's going to be absolutely awful when that happens. Yeah, you reckon it's going to go soon, do you? Damn, if it goes soon, that's it for USA. So we've covered the Aku Aku. Spear of Destiny, fabulously entertaining. It's one of those books you can't stop reading. So it's really cool. I read it many years ago. I'm going to find out when I read it. I always write in the back. I give the book a score. So the score is going to be. Let me see. Maybe I read it so long ago I didn't give it a score. There doesn't seem to be one here, but. It's so good. It's unbelievable. It talks about ectoplasm leaching out of the Spear of Destiny, and it went into Hitler, and it basically gave him it possessed him, and all the leading people in that party essentially were reincarnated Vikings. Who had been, their spirits re-entered from Vikings of 1,000 years ago, and they started trying to conquer like the Vikings did. And the ideas in that book are amazing. But those are the books I have here, which I would recommend that you read if you want to read, because someone told me, hey, I want to know what books to add to my library. So there you go, those books. So, nice. Okay, so Q question stuff says, it's 4:40 p.m. in Perth. Nice. So I guess the sun's still up in the air here. It's dark as out there. It's so dark. ZZ Top Stranger says, have you heard of Suspicious Observer's YouTube channel? If you did, what do you think about their views on electric universe and micronova events? So I haven't been watching Suspicious Observers, but I've been watching another channel with that bloke's information on it. And I love the micronova theory. So essentially, for those who haven't seen the micronova theory, what it's all about is, I'll tell you what it's about. A bloke says there's no way a comet hitting the Earth could evaporate all the oceans, all the ice, and all this goes into the atmosphere and causes 40 days of rain, which creates the world flood, and which changes the temperature of the Earth, and triggers the Younger Dryas, which is a temporary cooling. And he says there's no way this can happen. There's no way it would happen. The only thing to get enough enough energy to end the ice age, the only way to get enough energy to end the ice age is if the sun explodes, melts the ice, and it changes the temperature. And he says all these planetary nebulas that you see out there are not actually, they're actually nothing to do with a planetary nebula. They're actually, the sun has just recently gone micronova. So that's a micronova. It's a great theory. And he says anyone teaching that a comet can create enough energy to melt the ice sheets to end an ice age should never be teaching a classroom. And I think it's a brilliant theory. And he even says, I think the micronovas are going to go off in 2048 or something like that. I sure hope not. If that happens, it's all over, Red Rover. It's finished. We're over. The world's over. That's going to be terrible. And he says it's going to happen in our lifetime. So, yeah, I love that micronova theory. Curtis says hello. Hello, Curtis. Meister Jodler says all the ancient buildings tracked the sun and moon and their eclipses. Watch out, 21/6, 2020, but especially 4th of the 12th, 2021. Time is up, cycle repeating. Damn, that sounds pretty bad to me. That sounds pretty bad to me, mate. I'd be careful. I'd really watch out for that date. Might even put it in my diary and I'll stay at home that day. I won't go into work just in case. So Bogus Hype says Yellowstone won't explode. It will more likely sink into magma and expel a catastrophic amount of ash, which will only be dangerous for a few months. What will be left will be a burnt hole of lava rock. Interesting. Manan Chadva, hey, he says, hey, I have a question. Was Egypt invaded by humans before the first dynasty, and were they the survivors of the great catastrophe 12,000 years ago? Well, I have to say, in my humble opinion, sir, yes, certainly. Survivors of the great catastrophe 12,000 years ago, yes. I think there's always been people there, and they've proven there's always been people there. There's skulls going all the way back. It was pretty much Stone Ages until 1,000 years before the first dynasty, and then suddenly they became very high tech with their pottery, even more high tech. And this is a clue to the lost civilization. Suddenly they had extremely high tech pottery, which was more high tech than the entire Egyptian period, which followed. So that's something very strange going on there, and it kind of equates with the sudden technology they have with building Giza in the early dynasties. So in the early dynasties, there was a backdrop to it was like the Egyptian people had inherited and been inspired by ruins from a previous civilization, which gave them a way to build the pyramids and gave them knowledge to build those pyramids. Yeah. And he says, was it 12,000 years ago? Yeah, of course. It was more than that. It was way more than that. You know, we're going back to catastrophic events such as the radioactive event that I showed you 41,000 years ago in that book, Cycle of Cosmic Catastrophes. Something weird happened on the planet. We don't know what happened, but yeah. Curtis says, yeah. Mitch, did you watch the SpaceX launch? Indeed, I did not watch the SpaceX launch yet. I've been working all day and doing stuff and making some videos, and I hope you enjoy those videos. I know I put out quite a lot, but yeah, it's got to be done. Just got a compulsion to do it. You know what I mean? Like you guys probably have a compulsion to do your life done straight away, and you need to get them done, even though it doesn't pay you anything. You need to get them done, and that's how I feel about this. But anyway, Manan says, did they look different from us modern humans? You bet they did. So if you look, actually, Manan, if you look at the early skulls of the early Cro-Magnon, they actually had square-like holes for the eye slits where the eyes are, and they look like almost a different type of man, and they're called early Cro-Magnons, and so they definitely look extremely different to us. If they were high-tech people, long skull people, can you imagine those cone heads and what they looked like walking around? It would have been quite interesting, quite strange to say the least. Bogus Hype says, has Charles looked at the David Wilcock Corey Goode secret space program information? I don't know anything about that, I'm afraid. I don't know much about David Wilcock, but he's an interesting person. He says he's inspired by Edgar Casey. He says he is Edgar Casey, basically the new Edgar Casey. Man, you know what? Maybe he is. Ethra says, what's up, what boy? Yo! Silhouetta says, why no signs of the gods showing in Australia? No signs of the gods. So it means no ancient ruins, basically. And you're right, there are no ancient ruins except for that pyramid in Gympie, which is now wrapped around a church in Gympie where you have the polygonal stones. There isn't any. It's you're right. You're absolutely right. There are no signs. Was there a catastrophe that hit Australia? Something hit ancient Australia and it wiped everything out, destroyed everything. What happened? Who knows what happened? Something bad happened. Oh, yeah. So Matthew says, he says, The grouse once tried to build a magnificent canoe, more magnificent than any canoe ever made, but he failed and was embarrassed in front of the other animals. So what Matthew's doing is he means the wood grouse. You're talking about a bird, and you're making a story based on something in that video on the ancient stone softening, where the wood grouse, it's a bird that uses alchemy to make holes in rock. Can you believe it? It's a bird that used alchemy to make holes in rock. That's just crazy. Yeah. Wow Around says, I always thinking that survivors went through the world to start the humanity. That is why Sumerians, from one day to another, they build great civilizations. Indeed, so. Teriyuki says, I love your stone softening video. Excellent research, sources cited, refreshing, insightful video. Hey, thanks so much, Teriyuki. Indeed. Wow Around says, did Egyptians know about chemistry? Is there any evidence? There's huge evidence, massive evidence. Check out the latest video I made on Egyptian alchemy. The second from the latest. I put it out today. Massive evidence. So to explain alchemy. Oh, cheers, Mitch. Mitch says, thanks for hours and hours of information. Thank you so much, Mitch. So here's the evidence for the ancient alchemy. Alchemists, and I've been reading about alchemy in this book here. All right, this book here is called Plant Alchemy. Manfred Junius. He seems to be from India, and he's basically said he's basically written a book about how to do alchemy, and he's explained lots of principles. One of the principles is that everything is divided into three. Every component has three philosophical information components to it, and this is something modern physics, modern chemistry doesn't touch. It never says it never talks about the code underlying all reality that holds everything together. So the alchemists tried to isolate the three components of the code by burning the hell out of a substance, distilling the hell out of a substance, crushing and calcining the hell out of a substance. You not only burn it, but you keep burning it for hours and hours and hours, or fermenting the hell out of a substance to isolate one of three things. You want to isolate the soul, the philosophical soul. And philosophical, it means the code, the underlying code holding it. You want to isolate the spirit, or the mind, the anima, or the fire from that substance, or the chi, or also known as the ka. So you want the ba, which is the soul, and you want the fire, which is the chi, and you want to isolate those two things out of it. But you also want to isolate the form, which is the het, or the hat, or the head. We don't know how to pronounce it, HT in Egyptian. And you want to isolate one of those three things: form, fire mind, or soul. And so the alchemists would isolate the salt, and they would say, oh, I've got the philosophical salt. That means I've got this salt is the code component, the salt component. So every substance has to be made out of a soul, it has to be made out of the fire, and it has to be made out to give it energy, and it has to have a form. And they isolate that, and then they mix it with another isolate, and they try and make a new substance, and that's transmutation. That's alchemy transmutation. What were we talking about? We were talking about something, weren't we? Yeah. So, right. So, they knew about chemistry. So those three forms are in the three pyramids of Giza. We showed that. So Curtis says, have you looked into numerology? Apparently you can't make a lot of money with that, but I don't understand it. Indeed, Curtis. You know, it's really interesting. I haven't really looked into any numerology at all for a few years. I used to look into it, the Babylonian numerology, and I thought, you know what, this is really interesting. I did numerology on people to find their personalities out, and yeah, it works. It really works. It's really cool. But I don't make a habit of using it, you know, ever. So I don't know much about it, unfortunately. But yeah, it's really interesting. So in numerology, numbers like 21, 22, which are double 11 or double 10, are the most sacred, perfect numbers. And it's really interesting. Trekking with Joe says, exactly, something happened in Australia, but who knows We just know it happened. We do know it happened, but we don't know what happened. It's really interesting. Why does Australia look like Mars? Why does the Amazon look like the Garden of Eden? Columbus thought the Amazon was the Garden of Eden. What's going on? Why do you have such differences between different parts of the planet? Range 85 says, legend. Cheers back at ya. Manan says, hey, I keep hearing about the red-haired, fair-skinned people as the description for the Atlanteans. Also, they were giant. In the Aquaman movie, it is shown they have red hair. Can you please explain? I don't know what the Aquaman movie is. I'm so sorry. I don't really watch movies. But so you're saying you keep hearing about the redhead, fair-haired people as the description for Atlanteans. Indeed. So the redhead people. So have a look at UK. UK is the home of redhead people because they're on an island and they didn't mix with the people on the continent. And you look at all the redheads in history, all the English people in history who were very big leaders, they all got red hair. So there's something very smart about these people, very cunning. They have a high intelligence, and these people survived. They're descendants of the ancient giants. They survived in UK. Are they one of the reasons UK became such a strong country, that they had such high intelligence from these ancient redheads? And you find these ancient redheads worldwide. They used to live in Russia, where we had Giza-like structures, the Kurgans. They used to live all around the place in all these different countries. Did they live in Peru? Redheads in Peru, redheads in Ireland. In Ireland, they're even more redheaded than in UK. So English people would know who the Irish people were to pick on by their red hair. So the Irish are even more redheaded because they're even more insular than the people in the UK. The UK have mixed with other people, non-redheaded people, many different. UK has always been multicultural since the beginning. Matthew Paris says there are 6 different races living in UK, and I guess who knows which one was the red-headed one? He says the Picts, the Latins, the English, the Welsh. There was another race, the Jutes. The Jutes were physically exterminated during the Middle Ages, the early Middle Ages, by one Saxon tribe. It was just carnage. The whole of the Dark Ages in Europe was pure decimation, carnage, destruction. It was terrible. Yeah, well, we were talking about something, weren't we? So Count Bassie says, thank you, Doc, for a brilliant channel. Thanks so much, Count. Cheers. Very much appreciated. So we were talking about something. Right. So Luke Johnson says, there is remains of Mew in Queensland, tsunami wash. Interesting. Afterthought says, hey, brother, thanks for being sincere. Thank you so much, Afterthought. Q Question Stuff says, I got to go and watch my chickens burn all. Bye, Cosy. Catch you on the flip side. Cheers, and catch you later, Q Question Stuff. Bogus Hype says, are there pyramids in Iran or Saudi Arabia? Yeah, of course. We have the best surviving ziggurat in Iran. I forget the name, but it's a beautiful structure, and I'd love to go to Iran one day. The people are quite friendly and quite decent, so that would be really cool. Yeah. Saudi Arabia, I doubt it. So what happens, you probably know, in Saudi Arabia, there was a guy about 300 years ago, and this was the beginning of the radical Wahhabism, and he said, no more ancient sacrilege and ancient monuments. There's a sacrilege. Let's get rid of this. So they got rid of a lot of the history, unfortunately. So they really don't have much to show off to the tourists. So whenever you're on one of these Arab planes, so in Australia, when we want to get to Europe, you hop on one of the Arab planes, and they're showing off all their stuff. They're showing off all their things. And they say, look, you can do indoor skiing here. You can go to the shopping center. We have archery in our country. Archery, can you believe it? Horse riding. Oh, go to the oasis. But where's the ancient ruins? It's all gone. They got rid of it. And unfortunately, they don't have that to show off to the world. So they've got their oil. They've got their desert. They've got their air-conditioned palaces. But where's the ruins? They got rid of it. Unfortunately. Trekking with Joe, have you heard how Aboriginal language has a very strong connection to Magyar, the Atlantean language? The ancient Hungarian dialect. I have indeed. I have a friend on Facebook, and she keeps posting all the examples of how the Magyar language is so close to Sumerian. So the Magyars too are ancient redheads. Hungarians are very intelligent people, and what happened was they entered Europe from Central Asia, and they may have been an army which decided that they might have been pushed out of Asia by the Huns. They just had enough. They wanted to come into Europe. So they're Far East Europeans, and they could be related to those ancient Tocharian redhead people in China. And so that's yeah. So Mitch says Bigfoot's often described as having reddish brown hair. And thanks for the Swiss, is that Swiss francs, CHF10? I'm not sure how that works. Thank you. He says, M97 says, thank you for your work. Thank you so much. Nice. So, thank you. Bigfoot's are described as having reddish brown hair. So here we go. Okay, I'll tell you how that works. So, the monkey from Africa has black hair. The monkey from Asia has red hair, blonde hair, and is different looking. So when we come from monkeys, we don't come from the ones in Africa exclusively. We also come from the ones in Asia. So if you have this Bigfoot floating around Asia, which is the Yeti, and might have the reddish brown hair, boom, suddenly it's a contender for a missing link for us, isn't it? Yeah. Range 85 says, and copper in my hair, lol. Nice. It's the messages have gone up. Okay. So Pendle says, you'd be disappointed by average redhead IQ. So yeah, that's yeah. So Teriyaki says, redhead people are genetically linked to Neanderthal, or so I've heard. I've heard that too, but who knows if it's really true. Pendle says, it's a gene fault from stress. Range 85 says, I'm 148 IQ and I'm gingerish. Nice. Nice. Bogus says, IQ is not a legitimate measure of anything important. Pendle says, oh, really? A tall China man? Really? But hey, there are tall China people. So in China, you see tall people who look like Europeans in terms of size with an Asian face. But you also, then you see very short, small people as well. There's a huge variety of people in China, that's for sure. And I've met Chinese people taller than me, much stronger than me. You know, they're not all small. There are some quite huge ones as well. Yeah. So Mitch says IQ is processor speed, but it helps with complex ideas. Yeah. Paul from Newcastle. Hi, Charles and all. And he's given me the thumbs up and all that other stuff. So yeah. So thanks, M97. So Sublunacy says, incense, yummy. You gonna eat that stuff, mate? I'd be careful if I were you. You don't know where that's been. Yep, you don't know where that's been. Pendle says, range 85. If your IQ is that high, you would have presented better logic, unless you're being deceptive. So, yeah, I don't want to get involved in this war, but you two keep talking about it. Oh, damn, where are we? So Chancellor Merkelisms. Nice name. Says, hey, Charles, glad to catch you live. Texas clocking in. Hi, Chancellor. So I've heard it's quite late there in America, apparently. I wasn't aware, but I wanted to try this time of day. It's evening here, 7 p.m., to see what happens, you know. Yeah, so Curtis says, everything got real ducked 300 years ago. That's for sure. It sure did. So what I've actually just done, I've actually purchased for $100 online the first Encyclopedia Britannica. I'll be doing a live video on it, and I'll be getting when it arrives from Michigan, and I just paid $100, and it's a facsimile of the first one from 1771. It's printed in 1971. It was always a dream of mine to have it. It's 3 volumes, and I'll get people to say what articles they want me to read live, and I'll just read them out. So you will see what it says on the Great Pyramid. We'll see what it says about Stonehenge 300 years ago, what Scottish people thought about it. It's written by a society of Scottish gentlemen. It'll be cool. It'll be amazing. But anyway, Curtis says, so Sublunacy says, hey, Charles, man. Hey, range 85. Where's my fault in logic? Oh, they're talking about the IQ. So bogus hype. I go cat with red hair. Turbo Laser, greetings from Poland. Chesh. Rodney Thomas says, were the Pelasgians the people who ruled over the Danube Valley civilization? Hey, possibly. So the Pelasgians, I think, were the Minoans. Pelasgians, they're from the Thessaly region of Greece, and these people were the pre-Greeks, and they got pushed out. It looks like they were the Trojans, and they went to Rome to found Roman civilization. They might be related a little bit to the Etruscans as well, and they had enough. They left Greece. They might be the Minoans. They're a mysterious people lost to history. Sublunacy says, Charles, the rock softening paste is correct. I am never wrong, so proceed. Thank you, Sublunacy. Thank you. Nice. Yeah, it is correct, because we showed that the legend is the same on both sides of the Atlantic. Both the ancient Israelites and the ancient Peruvians both said there's a bird. They had to capture this substance that was being used by the bird. They put a clear glass container on top of the babies, and the bird was actually feeding this plant to its babies, this plant that melts rock, and they captured it in the glass container. And they said, hey, we can now melt rock and build Solomon's palace. This is the Shamir. Although there are other stories about the Shamir being a kind of laser, kind of like the Medusa, which turns things to stone. Right? Yeah, turns things to stone. So, Manon says, the Minoan civilization is said to be the oldest civilization in Europe. It was in Greece. Was there a civilization older? And yes, you could say, okay, here's the thing. Rome. So what happens is, if you look at old maps of Rome, there are pyramids there. And these pyramids were built by the same people as built the Giza pyramids. So the Giza civilization was not just in Egypt, it was in Rome as well. And kind of makes sense. Why did Rome suddenly become such a powerful city? What inspired them to become a powerful city? And so there were pyramids there in ancient Rome, lots of them, causeways, it was all there. And they used the building blocks to build Rome afterwards. And they forgot about it. They forgot about it all. A Green says, yo. Mr. Cat says, Choi Hong Man. He's massive. Cool. A Green says, Ming. Sublunacy says, vitamins. Louis, the 17th, says, the Chinese tend to shrink as they age. He also says, is IQ related to logic? I don't know much about IQ. I actually don't do too well on IQ tests that I did in high school. I'm not sure much about IQ, to be honest. I don't know if it's the greatest thing in the world or if it's really good, but I do know that people in Mensa think very highly of themselves indeed. So maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. But definitely there's a link between IQ and head size and brain size as well. Classic Chris says, you Australian? I am. Chancellor Merkelism says, there is a guy with a fancy looking hat copying your style on YouTube, claimed he found Atlantis. Oh, cool. He must be, imitation is the greatest flattery, so they can do that if they want. What's his name, by the way? Sounds interesting. Trekking with Joe says, over 50% of white males have red beard. That's actually true. I got a bit of this is actually red on me. This like half of the moustache is red, and bits of this is red as well. Bits of that is red, although that's dark brown, which is interesting. Anyway, but he says I read 60% in a Zoom magazine in the pub ammo section. Lol. So yeah, that's true. I mean, you look at males in America where beards are very popular, and yeah, everyone's got literally a red-brown beard. So especially Americans really have this quite strongly. It's in the Germanic population. So Lethal Outdoors says, hey, mate, love your work, especially the connection to the Hindu water festival, the deltas of Egypt, and the Holy Trinity all being ancient practices really made me think. Thank you so much, Lethal, for appreciating that. It means a lot because I'm happy that people appreciate it, where did it go? So Turbo Laser was saying something. He says, do you think there's a painting of an unknown artist at Yasna Gora showing 14 kings before Mieszko Pierwszy, the first ruler of Poland. He did the 966 christening of Poland. I didn't know about this. I'd love to know more. Please post a link to this. I was trying to find out information about Jasna Gora. This is the most holy place in Poland. It's basically a Polish Vatican. It's got a massive east-west causeway. The monastery is square-shaped, and it's got northeast, southwest facing walls. It's basically built on an ancient pyramid. It was built in the 1400s by monks coming from Hungary, and they said, let's build a monastery here. Now, what happened in the 1600s to Poland was a catastrophe. It was invaded simultaneously by Swedes, by Russians, by Cossacks, and these people burned and looted the lot, and they destroyed all the ancient history. So everything was destroyed. Poland came back from this crisis, but it lost all its heritage. So you try and look up the history of Jasna Gora, this ancient pyramid. You can't find a thing. There's nothing. There's literally nothing. It's gone. It's not like, say, Ireland or England where we still have medieval chronicles. No, it's gone. That history is gone. Anyway, so I don't know about that painting showing the 14 kings before Mieszko, but I think I know what you're talking about, actually, because I've seen paintings of these kings, but I didn't realize they were, are they old paintings or new paintings? I don't know. Anyway. Range 85 says, not sure about IQ and logic. I said I have ginger, and he said I'm deceptive. Curtis says, that's cool, man. Marcel Stegman, Charlie. Hey, Marcel. How you doing? Long-time viewer there. So Crawlface says hi, or very fortunate to catch a live chat. Hey, Crawlface. Louis XVII. Ginger's rumored not to have souls. We do have souls. That video, I was watching that the other day, actually. That's got to be the funniest thing, the funniest, most explosive, unpredictable video on YouTube. Yeah. So Sublunacy retracted his message. Pendle says, what does Pendle say? Pendle says, correlation is not causation. We need to factor in epigenetic processes. So what Pendle is talking about, I guess, epigenetics is basically when you eat your greens, it'll change your DNA. When you go out into the sun, it'll change your DNA. So your body will act differently to how it would have acted according to what you were eating previously or what you did with environment. And this is so much like Lamarckism. So that's quite interesting. So Vuan Ossenbrook says, hi from Finland, liked your videos all over the net. Thank you, Vuan. Thank you so much. Curtis says, just the OG gingers. My uncle has a soul for sure. Nice. Range 85 says, Pendle, why are you being rude? Louis says, the 17th, you know, Louis' son. Nice. Nice. Mitch is saying he's got the red head happening. Manan says there was cocaine found in an Egyptian mummy's coffin, but cocaine originates from South America. Did they discover the Americas before the Vikings? Yeah, they were trading with the Americas, and there's no other way you can look at that, is there? They were bringing cocaine and tobacco from South America, and they brought it to the old world. And after some revolution or catastrophe, that knowledge was lost again in the old world, and they forgot about the trade, and they forgot about the orichalcum as well that they were bringing from the New World as well, from a mine there. So Ricky says, hey, Chuckles, got back from eating tear gas. Oh, were you in the, you had to dodge some protesters, did you? It's terrible what's happening in America, and with those rioters. And I was actually reading that, I don't want to talk politics, they did an autopsy on that guy who died, and they said he actually died from, although he couldn't breathe, he wasn't asphyxiated, he just died from something else, maybe a heart attack or something. So they might even be rioting for nothing at the end of the day. So, but who knows? I don't want to get involved in that, but yeah. Damn, those riots. So, Mitch says, what do you think about the mud flood theory? Does it have any legs? And I think absolutely it's a really cool theory. We don't know where life comes from. We think we know because someone wrote it in a book. Look, that's not proof of anything. Because there's so much that isn't written and isn't known, and we know how narrow-minded people can be. And I've just been exploding that in my videos. I've been showing that people can be incredibly narrow-minded and they don't know left from right because they're looking in the center and they're not looking around to see what's going on around there. Like, that could change my data. That thing over there could change my data. No, they're just looking in here, just looking through there. They've got the tunnel vision happening, and there's like, I'm a scientist exploring physics, and that is what I'm exploring, that field there. Let's make it even narrower so I can get even more specialized. There we go. That's what I'm exploring. How's that going to know anything? How's that going to work out anything? Yeah, that's right. So Count Bassie says nearly all Rh negative blood type people are gingers. Oh, that's cool. Sublunacy. Manan vegetables were all flavored rich, not like we do now. Flavonoid rich. Nice. It's pretty cool, actually. I'm a real fan of Indian food, Indian cooking, and because it's medicine, it's full of turmeric, it's full of cumin. Everything in Indian cooking is actually, funnily enough, ancient medicine. So you eat that, you stay healthy. It's the best. This is the ancient Aryan idea of medicine. Yeah. So right. So Louis says, I watched a French program featured Ramses. It's a mummified body and his blonde hair dyed red with henna. Nice. Ricky says, police shooting tear gas at Pierceville protesters in Colorado Springs. T. McKenna, Terrence McKenna. I didn't know you're still alive. Hey Charles, is the moon are you the real one? Didn't he die? I don't know. Anyway, is the moon a spaceship? Thanks. So this is David Icke's idea, and as we know, David Icke banned from YouTube for talking about what's happening, right? And so McKenna's asking, is the moon a spaceship? So David Icke was on Australian TV a few years ago, and the people were so rude to him. They were abominably rude, and they joked. They said, do you think the moon was brought in on trucks? And he really didn't know how to answer that. I would have said, sorry, darling, I don't know if an internal combustion engine is going to work in outer space, but he said the moon was basically brought in and from somewhere else. And it was done in order to help mankind to give us a puzzle to make it the same size as the sun. And I think the moon is not really a spaceship, but it could be. It could have been colonized by man in the past for sure. So Pendle says. So are they talking? Okay. Tim McKenna. Hey Charles, do you trust the plan? WWG1 WGR. I don't know what that is. Sorry, the acronym. Unfortunately, if someone knows what it is, just chime in. So Ricky says I'm serious. Crawlface says smile. Hey Crawlface. Well around says, is the Judaism made by the survivors of the philosophy of one God of Akhenaten? Abraham did not exist, so Moses may be. But is it a reference of Akhenaten's brother, Thutmose? I'm really not a fan of Akhenaten leading anything because he seems to not have been... his philosophy seems not to have been endured. He seems to have been unpersoned in Egypt. I'm not a huge fan of Akhenaten. And if you look up what Josephus says about Moses, I'll have to make a video about it. He says Moses' name was Osasif, and he doesn't mention Akhenaten. I don't think he knows who Akhenaten was. I think Moses was truly a different person to Akhenaten. Yeah. Bogus Hype says, Chuck growing Earth theory. Absolutely. Absolutely, because stars are variable. There's a star inside the Earth, and it's shrinking and expanding the crust as it varies in its strength. But I think it shrinks as well. I don't think it just exclusively grows from the thermonuclear creation of matter in the middle in the sun, and then it's growing. No, I think it's shrinking as well. And that shrink can explain so much, as we've explained in previous videos. Some Sublunacy says coward equals Karen. I don't think there's any Karens here. I think you're talking about the latest thing where busybody women are referred to as Karens. Louis says Lucille Ball, the American comedian, dyed her hair with something called henna rinse. Nice. Chancellor Merkelisms. Indie archaeology is the Atlantis guy. Check it out. I'll have to have a look at indie archaeology. So I'm actually going to write down indie archaeology, and I'll see how he talks. You know, if he has the Charlesisms. Okay. Scratch says, "Hello, Charlie boy. Hello. Hey, are you over here? Hello, Scratch. Hello." And he says, "Hey, Ricky, mwah." So Amanda Davey says, "Everything about stone very interesting. Hydroxyanthraquinones from madder, Rubia tictorum, inhibits calcium oxalate, kidney stones. Could this have softened rock? What are your thoughts on this?" You're very advanced in this. You know more than me. I don't know. And I don't know much about that chemical either. That's very interesting. It sounds like it's a very organic chemical, and you're saying this could have softened rock. I think it must be there must be metal catalysts and stuff in there, but I don't know. Andy says, "Hey, Charles, massive thanks to you for all your amazing content over the years." Thanks so much, Andy. It's much appreciated. Jeremy T says, "Dr. Koss, how's your day going? Stoked that you're doing this. How cool. How cool indeed." Yeah. So my day's going very well. Thank you very much, Jeremy. Because I made like 3 videos today. I pumped them out. Check them out if you want. But they're some of the best stuff I've done. So yeah, I'm just proud of them. You know, I'm just happy. You know, we're getting to the bottom of Giza and how it works. And I thought, you know, go live as well, talk to you people, you know, see what you think and all that, you know, see how you're doing as well. And, you know, because I really don't talk to you people. So, yeah. Ricky says, "We had citizens patrolling with AKs. No one was going to loot or pillage much for long. We don't tolerate idiots." Good. That's a great idea. Like, yeah. It's so funny how it gets out of control in America. It's almost like America is run, like American people, the kindest people you'll meet, but the government seems to be just psychos and, you know, whoever's in charge, it's just, and instead of control, it seems to be courtrooms. That's America. Anyway, I don't know. I shouldn't talk about that. So Turbo Laser says, Turbo Laser, where's Mr. Turbo Laser? Come here, you Turbo Laser. Yeah, okay. Oh, the people have made a lot of comments. Okay, I'll have to speed up a bit. So I can't find okay. He says, "For the painting of Polish kings, Google Podset Królów Polskich Jasna Góra." Okay, I'll just copy and paste that, and I'll Google it a bit later. Thank you so much. I don't know how to search in Polski, so. And go to images, you will see the painting. A few of them you will see Mieszko Pierwszy circle. Thank you, Turbo. So Louis XVII says, "They have always rioted for nothing." Ricky Spence says, "Greater." We shouldn't talk about that. You're getting a bit political. Ricky Spence says, "Greatest show on earth." That's all I need to say. Scratch. Trekking with Joe. He died of COVID. The media reported not suffocation. Sorry, bad joke. Pendle says, "A mud flood. We're not sure if it has legs, but we did dig up an old pair of wellies." Nice. Curtis says, he says they're agent provocateurs and all that. Ant says, "Greetings from sunny Wales, Charles. Love your work. Thank you so much. I'd love to tour Wales, see what's there. You know, that'd be amazing." So sunny Wales sounds amazing. Louis says, "The Bible gives man a begin because without it, we have no beginning." Ricky says, "I also have a gallows sense of humor, coping skills." I think everyone has a gallows sense of humor. Gallows humor is pretty cool. It's pretty nice. I tell jokes which are a bit questionable myself, and people don't always appreciate them. But you know what? They're kind of funny. So yeah, so it's pretty cool. Rajan Guitar says, "I'm Indian, O minus, not a ginger." Yeah, okay. So I looked up the distribution of the O's and all these, and honestly, they're pretty evenly spread across the world. So whenever it happened a really long time ago, and you have a pretty even distribution of all the blood groups around the world, even between different races. So it's even it may have distributed even before all the racial differences occurred, or who knows what's going on. Mitch says, you're right. The way people will only look at things through a very narrow scope is annoying, and it's hard to break people out of it. I blame our schools. Rodney says, Charles, it's been shown there are Stonehenges in Spain and Germany. Are the same people responsible? Yeah. So it looks like the Stonehenge was built by the Beaker Empire, a sea naval trading empire, which we've shown probably had a base 20 system of counting. They probably might have had some trade with America as well. And these people formed the basis of the foundation of Western Europe. So I wouldn't say Western Europe arose from Egypt. It arose from the Beaker civilization and from Stonehenge. Some authors have suggested that the first parliament of Western civilization arose at Stonehenge. This was one of their centers of power. Andy, Charles, are you at all familiar with the Australian pygmy people that apparently used to be quite prevalent on the continent in the past? Could they exist in caves, jungle, somewhere? Yeah, I'm familiar with them. So the old theory is there were pygmies living in Australia. These are the same as the Bushmen living in Africa. The theory went that these people were all wiped out, and by people coming in from India about 6,000 years ago. And in fact, I've seen Aborigines who look exactly like Indians, people from India. They live around Ayers Rock. And these people mixed with the pygmies, and eventually the pygmies they couldn't survive. They went away. And so, yes, there were people here like this. And they seem to have, although they're sort of Homo erectus size, like the Lucy chimpanzee, they seem to have modern heads. They seem to be modern humans. So they're not, I wouldn't even know if they're primates. You wouldn't even call them that. I think you would call them modern humans. But do they still exist somewhere? Be nice to find out. Ricky says US too. Manan says, I'm from India. In Hinduism, there's a story that there was a city of reptilians, the Naga people, underground. Are there similar stories around the world? Not to the same extent, I'm afraid. We know that, for example, so in Nordic tradition, there is Loki. Loki falls down, and his son is a snake. His other son is a dog, and he has a wife. And these people live underground under a sacred mountain somewhere. And so he is a reptilian. So there's that story, but I really don't know any more stories like that. That's right, says Chucky. You warned me about the stone breaking effects in ephedra plants before I caused before I abused ephedrine in the early 2000s. Would have saved a lot of money on my teeth, bruv. I'm sorry to hear that. That's right. Yeah, and I hope they find a way to grow back new teeth as well. That would be very useful. Bogus hype. Where we go one, we go all. Oh, you've solved that. Excellent. And he says the rumor is that the US military is fighting the baby eating cult. I've never heard that. That sounds a bit like a vampire movie to me. Curtis says, hell yeah, brother. Louis XVII says, I was confused about the type of Indian food until you said cumin. Then I knew you were referring to East India and not the West Indies. Oh, yeah, I wasn't talking about African food. Yeah, but Indian food is quite nice. It's extremely satisfying to eat. Probably because there's a lot of oil in it as well, a lot of oil and carbohydrates. You just feel very satisfied when you finish eating it. But if you eat other foods, it doesn't have the same effect. So Paul John Jones says, where we go number one, we go number two. Oh, bogus hype. Did you say there's a star inside the Earth? Yeah, for sure there's a star inside the Earth, just like a ball lightning is a miniature star. Just like there's atomic explosions we saw in the previous video on so-called atomic collisions, or a miniature lightning storm with little lightning explosions at the terminus of each, where when the charge has nowhere to go, it wraps around itself, it becomes a ball. Yeah. So, sublunacy, Louis, the vessel does not matter food. Louis XVII said there are two Indias in this world. Sublunacy says trees have all the vitamins. That's right. Says, you should make a video on the Egyptian god named Min, who could be the first compatible archetype of Christ. I'm pretty sure Jesus was based on Min. Yeah, so Min is very interesting. Mentioned by Herodotus, an early king who built massive waterworks across Egypt. He would be very interesting to research, actually. Louis 17 says one is Barat and the other is a group of islands in the Caribbean Sea. Nice. Ricky says, moi. Sublunacy says, forget the poison vegetable fields. Terence McKenna says, hey, Charles, if matter is constantly falling from space, are the Earth and other planets growing? Is this why all the continents fit together on both sides? Yeah, I think so. I think you're right about that for sure. Oh yeah. Where are we going? Where? Yeah. Oh yeah. Where are we at? Yeah, got it. So I might skip a few, but Filthy says hello, Dr. Charles. Big thanks for YouTube and research for big thanks for you for watching. I'm very happy. I'm just doing this as a hobby. It's just a lot of fun and but trying to get to the truth. Raja Guitar says Louis the 17th wasn't the group of okay. He's talking about the islands again. Okay. Chancellor Merkelisms. Indie archaeology is that guy just supposedly found Atlantis. His hat looks legit. Well, if the hat's legit, he must be legit too. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Sublunacy. Charles, eat your meat, get your vitamins, and thank me later. Trees have all your vitamins. Yeah, I actually do eat meat. I was a raw vegan for a while, but yeah, you see, I'm not thin. I'm eating the meat. Yeah. Oh yeah. So just plain, folks. Hey, it's CK at 5:24 a.m. Yes, indeed. You know what? It's yeah. Raja Guitar. Thanks, Charles. Ricky says that. Curtis says soak him in baking soda. Good to know. I don't know what you're talking about there, but yeah, good to know. Bogus Hype says, Agent Provocateurs, US is under attack by foreign philanthropists. And yeah, he says Soros is buying rights to destabilize. Filchi says, Charles, you mentioned in your videos you have Polish ancestors. I am from Silesia in southeastern Poland. Can you tell us where your ancestors came from? Yes, my father is from southeastern Poland in the Lublin area, from a village called Krasnik. And he talked about how he had to walk to school in the mud, and we retraced the route. But then now in 2016, but they've paved it over. Mum's from the Poznan Opola area, yeah. And I have a German ancestor in there somewhere as well, from Silesia, from Kłodzko. And Kłodzko is German Glatz. It's a beautiful city. It's a beautiful town. It's just on a hill, on a plain. Silesia is the most beautiful country I've ever seen. The most beautiful countryside. And I suspect strongly that Silesia was the center of Lek's kingdom, because you see a lot of Lek place names. Lek is an ancient king in Central Europe before Poland came to be. So Jeremy says, glad to hear you're proud of your work. I'm a fan, but you seem to be lacking your normal pizzazz for everything. You're awesome. Hope no douchebags are causing you any grief. They're jealous. You rock. Thank you so much, Jeremy. Well, I'm pumping out a lot of videos at the moment. I'm working on I'm actually working on a diploma, and I'm going to be a mortgage person. Yeah, I'm going to do that. I've actually always been into banking. I think it's quite interesting, but I'll continue making the videos as a hobby. Sean says, be positive, dude. Raja Guitar says, is O- the first human? Perhaps someone can answer that in the comments, because I don't know nothing about that. Ricky says, I don't want to hijack the live stream, so just no more politics, thanks. Good idea. Scratch says, yeah, but RH negative cannot be traced back to the rhesus monkey, but all others can. RH minus blood origin is unknown. It also cannot be loaned. Louis says, Catharism is a medieval sect of Christianity. Just plain folks says, do you think base 12 is sacred geometry? I think so. Kimberly says, hey there, Charles. Hey, Kimberly. Kimberly from Northern Australia, I think. So Sean says PNG has pygmies. And yes, indeed. So there's an interesting thing. The Tasmanian Aborigines were decimated. They were wiped out. All the pure blood ones were killed in the 19th century. What they did they fanned out and they went from one end of the Tasmania to the other, and they were just shooting all of them, and they killed them all. And it's not something you hear about often, but it happened. And the reason was all the sheep were getting speared and eaten, and they said, okay, we've had enough of this. But before that happened, they said these guys look just like the guys in Papua New Guinea. They don't look like the guys in Australia proper. So there must have been an ancestral link. So the PNG people must have spread out over Australia to Tasmania. Tasmania being a redoubt for this invasion of the PNG people, where they still survived long after they'd been wiped out in the mainland. And you see this with the animals as well. Completely different animals in Tasmania. Tasmania, you have road runners. They're called road chooks. I never see them you don't see them in Australia. They run in front of the cars. The Tassie devil is a type of fox. It's a marsupial fox. What a marsupial is, imagine a normal animal with a more female, curvy, longer body. And that's a marsupial, and it's a bit slower and more clumsy than the non-marsupial version. So it takes a while to get moving and hopping along, and that's a marsupial. And you see the Tassie devil. We saw one running on the road. It was trying to get away from the car. And what we're talking about, Tasmanian Aborigines. Yeah, I saw a guy in Tasmania. Tasmania has all the original inhabitants who came over, all the people from Ireland who came over. It's full of redheads. Everyone has red hair. In the 19th century, but I saw a guy who looked like an Aboriginal. So they didn't kill all of the Tasmanian Aboriginals. What were we talking about? I've gone into something. So yeah, Chancellor Merkelism says, could the pyramids be an actual nuclear bomb? Gee, that's going to demonetize the video, but that's all right. To destroy the religion if it were raided. I actually thought that the Arks of the Covenant were this, and the arks being associated with the ship, I imagined were actually repositories to store the DNA, but I've since come to realize there might be another explanation. The ark boat and the ark box were actually have the same name because the boat was carried around like an ark. So that's another explanation. Yeah. So Count Bassi says, numerous chemicals can all dissolve or melt rock. Examples, hydrochloric, nitric, orthophosphoric, sodium hydroxide, hydrofluoric acids. Some plants have some of these chemicals. And yeah, it's right. You don't want to touch hydrofluoric acid. So I heard a story. Someone spilled a bit on his hand. And then he he was doing backyard chemistry. Then he jumped into the swimming pool and he tried to wash it off. And eventually his hand all turned black and he died in hospital. So chemistry can be very dangerous, I have to tell you. But I like to do a bit of chemistry myself to mess around with it. But yeah, just stick to the safe stuff. Don't do anything with phosphorus either. Don't touch phosphorus. Lovecraft touched phosphorus as a child. He just touched it on his finger. As a result, he nearly lost that finger. And because he was doing stuff in his chemistry lab, in his book, he's full on with doing chemistry and making these monsters. He was doing genetic engineering in his fiction books before genetic engineering was invented, and so he always had a sore finger as a result after that with a bit of nerve damage. Yeah, so be careful with chemistry. Just do safe stuff. There's plenty you can do safely. So yeah. So Paul from Newcastle, hello. Oh yeah, it's just changed. There we go. So, bogus hype. Yes, thank you so much. So he says, Chucky, what's the origin of the English monarchy? Ooh, that's quite a question. So we have different dynasties. We have the William the Conqueror dynasty, the Norman dynasty of the Normans. The Normans married into the Aquitaine dynasty, Eleanor of Aquitaine, and she gave this dynasty most of France. Most of the southern part of France reverted to the English monarch as a result, and this became the Angevin dynasty, the Poitou region. It was kind of a different dynasty which succeeded the Normans, and so you had the English king ruling most of France and the French king ruling a tiny bit, until, of course, King John, who lost Poitou, and then he lost Normandy, and he couldn't get it back because he hated his nobles. He didn't want to work with them. He was the most incorrigible person you would ever see, but a very capable administrator. So for some reason, although he was busy alienating everyone, his other personality was busy doing excellent revenge on everyone. Yeah, crazy. So the origin, So the Saxe-Coburgs came along in the 1700s when, wasn't it? Who was that? Who was that guy who died with no issue? I don't know much about modern history. I'm sorry to tell you, but we all know the story of the Saxe-Coburgs and how they're Germans and etc. Yeah, but you see the same. So, for example, the Dutch monarchy is the same as the English monarchy, is the same as the Russian monarchy. All the one happy family, which created World War I. Isn't that funny? So one of the reasons the monarchs lost their empires. Yeah. Oh yeah. So Manan says, I have a theory that the fallen angels, Loki, were some kind of advanced ancient astronauts who fell on our planet. Can you imagine? And also, why did they look like humans if they were aliens? Yeah, that's a good point. I think they were humans. That's why they looked like humans, and they had space travel. And the reason they're called ancient astronauts is they landed in a place. Say if you land in New Guinea today, and the people say, well, the big giant Americans, they're taller than us, the giants, and they took our women, and they set up. They taught us their writing, and they're the gods. And I think that's what happened in ancient times after some catastrophe. Jafoli, hey, how you doing? So he says, thanks for being up late, as if I was too. Quick catch up on what you're talking about. Nice. Scratch says, Herodotus knew where Atlantis was. He included it in his map. He had it spelled as Atlantes. So indeed, you're talking about, and actually you're quite correct. And if you want more information than Herodotus is prepared to give, look up Diodorus, and he talks about the Atlantes quite a lot. And he even talks about their war techniques and how they seem to have had a very Asiatic war technique. So they could be from Asia. They lived in North Africa, and they fired darts. They fired arrows. This darts, arrows things, fighting from a distance, is how Easterners fight. And Westerners are more like, get the sword out and do that, start hacking away. And so that's why the Westerners were unable, and the Romans were unable to fight against the Parthians, and why the Westerners were unable to fight against the Mongols, who had this superior technique. Sean O'Connor, whatever your name is, sorry, Sean says, what about the new king of England? Who do you mean? Do you mean William? William's quite an interesting chap. He's quite capable, I think. Yeah, I think he'll be a nice king. Maybe Charles as well will be a good king. Yeah. So John Paul Jones says the continents fit together. Do the continents fit together on the other side? I hope so. Admiral Keck says, hey, Charles, do you like Elvis? I love Elvis. Jafuli Pooches says, who's that? Rodney Thomas says, Charles, do you think the pyramids in Antarctica are real, or are the people seeing what they want to see? I think they're seeing what they want to see, but some rocks will always look like pyramids. If they form very quickly and without impurities, they will take it on a crystalline form. Louis 17 says, there are photographs from the 19th century of an Aztec man and woman. I've never knew such humans existed. They were so different in appearance, physically speaking. Nice. Fast Eddie. Hey, Fast Eddie says, I try to go to Antarctica and have a look. The military will sink your boat. Sublunacy says, Louis, check out the big mummies. Louis says, humans don't look like them today. Raja Guitar says, Charles, what's your date on the Sphinx? How does it fit the Egyptian history? What about the pyramids? Raja, I don't know. Unfortunately, it's up in the air. It's still up in the air. But look, the whole of Giza, not just the Sphinx, is older than the pyramids, because you don't suddenly build a pyramid. There was something there before that which caused them to build the pyramid in that location. There was at least an alignment there, or there were totem poles there, or there was a hill there, or there was, and we in fact know there was a hill inside the Khafre, the Khufu pyramid. So the pyramids didn't just appear one day. There was a tradition going back tens or maybe hundreds of thousands of years of pyramids in that particular location. So it's all older than the pyramids. So Scratch says, Google the world according to Herodotus 430 BC. You'll see Atlantis, West Africa, right where the eye of the Sahara is. Keck says, hey, Charles, I just watched all of Aloha from Hawaii by Elvis Presley. Like Elvis. Yeah, that's a cool concert. So Elvis says, I've seen big monies before, but those two are still living. Very striking. Fast Eddie says, money is an electrical system. Now, we know money is gravity. Gravity is accumulating. It snowballs, doesn't it? The more you have, the more you get, right? But Fast Eddie is saying it's an electrical system. Fast Eddie, do you want to clarify that point? If you want. Jafuli says buy Bitcoin. Sublunacy says stoned. Scratch says the 1260 counting system is sacred geometry. Sean says pyramid schemes, Chuck, mortgage broker. Ricky says you're welcome. Rune says hi all. Scratch says it's also a basis for music. Jafuli says hey. Louis XVII says Tasmania is named after a Dutchman. Yeah, it's named after Van Diemen. Chancellor Merkelism says the pyramids were a primitive nuclear bomb designed to self-destruct in imminent invasion. Paul from Newcastle says, been telling people about the window tax, UK daylight robbery. You can see old buildings today bricked in windows. Yeah, so they had the window tax in UK for hundreds of years. So they built small windows because they thought, okay, we got to tax something. What are we going to tax? Let's tax those people building fancy big windows and thinking they're king of the world. They can pay up. Yeah, make them pay. Noobster says, good morning, Charles. Good morning, Noobster. Noobster at. Scratch says, window tax. They tax anything. Don't they tax anything? Louis XVII says, Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner were always my favorite. Fast Eddie says, pyramids are Noah's Ark. Yeah. Ben says, I love watching this. So interesting. It's fun, isn't it? It's cool. Where were we? Why does it always do that? It scrolls down like super fast instead of bringing them out slowly. Yeah, right. Okay, so there's quite a lot. Oh, there's heaps. There's heaps. Raja Guitar says, Charles, what's your date? Okay, we know that. Asahoyu says, Egyptians in Tasmania, the Ark, a part of the Anunnaki Robota, the power cell. Sublunacy, we have limestone here, still looks new, kinda. Ricky Spence says, I think the Ark was a plasma speaker. Fast Eddie, how does the Great Flood work on a ball? Where does this water that increases sea level so much magically come from? It's flat. Oh, I think from the ground. Noopster says, ever done research on the Bosnian pyramids? I made a video about it. I think it's a pyramid, but it might not be made by man, but it's a pyramid. It might be natural. Fast Eddie says Noah's Ark. That actually sounds good because we are learning from that constructions where I can find something like that. Oh man, you can just pop over to the Walmart. No, just kidding. I don't know. I don't know where to find that. Sublunacy says, am I making sense? Limestone was laid here in Ontario. Flick says, Dr. Charles, as I mentioned, I live in Silesia, Poland. There's a lot of new ancient discoveries because of LiDAR technology. This is crazy how many different civilizations lived here before us. Well, here's the thing, Filchi. The Romans were unable to conquer. Why did they not conquer Poland? There must have been a country there. Because if it was just a few tribes, they would have walked over them, wouldn't they? Like they did in Gaul. So there must have been an empire there, and it's all history is gone. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Ricky says we're electromagnetic bags of water. That's the best explanation of the human body I've seen. We literally are. Ant says, please come to Wales when you can. You'll love it here. There's so much to investigate. It truly is a magical place. He says something in Welsh. Nice. It must be a nice greeting. Louis says, Zadok the priest, Nathan the prophet, anointed Solomon king. The monarchs of Europe are the descendants of biblical king. Nice. Scratch says his last job was a limestone miner. Nice. Charles, how come sometimes you have an intro, sometimes not? So now I'm on a laptop at Mum's place, and I don't have that intro here on the computer, so I can't add it to the thing. So I just upload the file directly. Fast Eddie says the Great Flood only makes sense inside a dome that can fill with water, then drain away again on a ball. Where does the extra water come from and go? I think just from the ground. You squeeze the ground, it comes up. Yeah, I might have to skip just a few just to get up to scratch. Oh, yeah. So Scratch says, which is not surprising as I live close to the Roman city of Bath, which is built with this stuff. So it's built with this Bath limestone. So if you go to Bath, wow. So when I was in Bath, I felt like I was in ancient Rome almost because, or just an ancient place because it's all built in a strange type of stone that Actually, Sydney is built from the same stone. You go to Sydney, it's all this limestone, which looks like Bath stone. Apparently, Edinburgh is the same. Here in Melbourne, it's bluestone. We have the bluestone volcanism, everything bluestone. Manan says, you said in an old video that the fallen angel astronauts and the Nephilim were fighting and made each other extinct. Did us humans inherited their tech and architecture? Yes, yes, exactly. We are them. We are them, and we've inherited everything. Alphabet, writing, high technology, and even the ideas and stories, they wanted it to be passed on into the future. Ricky says, Bath, the Romans were so interesting. You can say that again. And Bath is just a beautiful place. So what happened was, Bath was the casino of the royal family and all the nobles, the aristocracy. It was the English Versailles. And throughout the 1700s, 1800s, they tried to rebuild all the ancient Roman ruins, and they put classical heads all around the Roman Bath there. And it's just a really beautiful place. And I love Bath. It even has the house of the discoverer of Uranus, William Herschel. And I was shocked when I saw that. I went in there. You see his telescope. You walk around in his backyard where he was sitting with his telescope when he discovered Uranus. Yes. England's just amazing. England's probably my favorite country on the planet. It's beautiful. So, yeah. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. Bogus Hype says, Chuck, are there discussions about ancient structures in antiquity? There's no mention I've seen in the Bible, maybe Apocrypha. Yes, there are. So the Bible is full of hints about ancient structures because, well, actually it isn't. It's full of hints about ancient giants because it talks about iron being, so here's the thing, it talks about Tubal-Cain and iron being used before the flood, and which can only mean that there were two iron ages, and then it went back to the Stone Age, and everything was wiped out after a catastrophe. So the Bible mentions the technology of the past, and it does this in the apocryphal books as well. It talks about the apocryphal books. Oh my God. So as I said in my book, Confessions of the Gods, radio devices, radio transmitters, talking over a distance, all sorts of devices in the apocryphal books. And for one reason or another, this didn't get into the Bible because they thought, what the heck is this? It must be corrupted information. We're not putting that in here. No way. So Asahoyu says, Lapis, he has an amazing name. He's got the Japanese name, Asahoyu. Then he calls himself Lapis Philosophorum, and he watches every video. He's amazing. And he's very excited. So Lapis Philosophorum means stone of the philosophers. And he says, pyramid of a pre-flood Luke Baalbek. Baalbek, pregnant woman, is for sure pre-flood. And I totally agree with you. Baalbek is another Giza. Baalbek is another Giza that was recycled. Rome is another Giza that was recycled. Teotihuacan is another Giza in Mexico. And this was worldwide. How old is it? Who knows? Ricky says, I believe all these megalithic structures were pre-flood in South America, Egypt, etc. Yeah. That bloke clarified electrical energy and money. So let's see what he says. He says, Crawlface says, we certainly can represent money in terms of electricity, or should I say currency? Currency, I see current exchange. Nice. Sublunacy says, we're all the giants. Fast Eddie, accounts are charged and discharged. Current accounts, so on and so forth. Louis XVII, and that submerged megalithic near Japan too. Interesting. Andy says, Charles, do you think that Australia was mined heavily in our prehistory? I made a video about that, didn't I? Like a few years ago. Lots of myths about carving rivers and moving mountains, etc. If so, any relation to giants which pop up in myths? Yes, because obviously the rainbow serpent is some ancient machine which went around carving the land. Doesn't that sound a lot like ancient strip mining? Or even if you say, so if you're, you know the novel Dune, and there's a harvester, and they go around on the surface scooping up the ground to get the spice. So rare earth metals are mined in a similar way. They actually go around on a beach or on a lake's sort of surface of a dry lake, and they're scooping up the sand. It's called rare mineral sands, and they're scooping up the sands. They're mining the sands. It's an easy form of mining, but no mining is easy. It's always too expensive and not worth it. But they're scooping up the sands and they're getting the rare minerals out of this. And China is like, rare minerals? Oh, I want some of that. And they've bought everything in Australia, all the rare minerals. Paul says, Lord Almighty, I feel my temperature rising. Scratch says, and the only way they could possibly have known that is from space, surely. Raja says, Charles, you're archaeologist, a geologist. No, I'm not. Historian. Scratch says, the Malvern Hill in England look like pyramids. They do. Malvern Hill is beautiful. There's a ley line running. It's a series of hills, and there's a path running across the tops of the hills. And it's a ley line. It's quite interesting. People say ley lines aren't real. Look at the Malvern Hills. Bogus Hype says, Chuck, I've been thinking that the 20 years it took to build the pyramid is actually just an addition of a smooth outer layer to the pre-existing pyramid if they defaced the Sphinx to fit their needs. I agree. Yeah, I was saying that in earlier videos. You're totally right. Totally on the money. Bogus Hype, why not the pyramid? River Smith, good evening. Good evening, River Smith. Sublimacy, Charles, can you do a video on comparing limestone ages images to known natural deposit dates? That's a brilliant idea. Yeah, I'll look into that. Gorby69. Hi, Gorby. Do you believe in mud fossils? A little bit. Maybe they're true. Scratch says there were 144,000 outer casing stones on the Great Pyramid. Louis says China supposedly flooded one or more of their ancient cities filled with many very detailed stone carvings about 50 years ago. Sublunacy says, mud fossil, is that a joke? Jog my memory. So I'll jog your memory. So mud fossil is, he says that stones are actually fossils of living things, and that's how stones form. There's something to that because stones cannot form gradually. They must all form instantly. Or you'd only have half stones, wouldn't you? And the rest would erode away. And that's one of the problems of fossil formation as well, that they used to criticize evolution. So we don't know exactly what happened. Jafuli says, it will be in Wales, will be in Wales ASAP, won't you, Chucky? I want to go there. Yeah, we can catch up. Boat-shaped rocks facing the sea everywhere, upside down, perched onto other megaliths. Coming soon, guys. You got no choice, Chucky. Yeah. Louis XVII says, what type of animal returned with the olive branch? It was it was a dove, wasn't it? Two sacred birds. Yeah. Sublunacy says electrical discharge makes rock sediment in moments. I'm not sure what you're alluding. Yeah, that's how rocks form. It was in moments. You're right. Scratch says my ex-wife came from Bath and eldest daughter was hatched there. Nice, hatched. That's you got an interesting technique there, Scratch. Yeah. Scratch says Graham Hancock also lives there. Well, who wouldn't? It's a beautiful place. If I lived in England, it would be Bath. It wouldn't be anywhere else. It would just be Bath. Crawlface says, Fast Eddie, a reasonable logic is wherever the water can drain away to is where it may also come from. Doesn't mean it's the only source of water, but etc. Daniel says, hey, Charles, I'm from Queenscliff and I've watched your video on Benito's treasure. Are you the guy that's looking for the treasure? Someone, love your work. I've read so much about it recently. Do you assume Mary and old Kerosene Jack made it up? So what happens is we have a pirate treasure. We have actually several pirate stories in Melbourne. I used to tell one of them on my tour. This is the other pirate story. Kerosene Jack was was the cabin boy, possibly, of a guy called Benito, an Italian pirate, and he was being hounded by the British into Port Phillip Bay. And he decided to ditch his stuff in a cave in Queenscliff. There's caves in Queenscliff, beautiful area to explore. Someone contacted me and said he's gonna get the treasure, yeah, he's gonna do it. And I haven't heard back from him. It's all a big secret, but whatever, that's okay. And he's read so much about it recently. Nice. There's actually a children's book about Benito. I've got a children's book about Benito. Someone wrote a children's book about it. Here's the problem. That treasure might not be in the Benito legend that they say was there, the statue of the Virgin Mary. I found an article saying that was found in Rio, I think, or in South America in the 40s. So that might not be true. Okay, so that guy looking for the treasure, he might be looking for a long time. Lots of people have been looking for a long time, and they've blown up all the caves around there. But it's a beautiful area. I recommend having a look around there. Yeah, I'd love to have a look one day. So, yeah. Yeah. So Teriyaki says, Charles, have you heard of the pre-Neapolitan Wars? Moscow being all white stone, super intricate stonework, and the Great Fire of Moscow starting from blinding flash and other evidence of atomic blast. I never heard of that. It sounds intriguing. Manan says, who were the Nephilim giants and fallen angels astronauts? Were they two rival advanced factions with nuclear bombs and stuff? And why did they fight? Yes, absolutely that. Absolutely that. Why did they fight? Ooh. Why do we fight? We fight because I think usually we fight because one country is unable to trade with the other countries, and they say, okay, I'll take over then. In that case, we'll take over. Germany said, okay, you're blockading us. Okay, we'll have to conquer a few more countries. Japan said, you want to blockade us? Okay, we're going to have to go for China. Keep going for China, and maybe we'll grab India and Australia too. But we don't want to touch Russia because Admiral Zhukov destroyed a lot of our tanks in that conflict, so we'll just ignore Russia. But funnily enough, if they attacked Russia, it would have been all over. They would have won the war. So ironic. They were fighting in the wrong place. They had to go to Indonesia to get the oil. That's something else. So Ricky says the pyramids are in the Bible. They are called something about Moses. Louis says, my point, Columbus means dove in Latin. A dove found dry land and Columbus found new land. Well, exactly. You got it. Columbus, say, I made a video a while back saying the Columbus legend is actually a legend that was around before Columbus. And the fact you're calling someone Columbus, whose name was Colon, a little bit different, and you have a Saint Columbus who seems to have possibly gone to the New World, is very interesting indeed. And he went to the New World from Ireland a long time before that. It seems legendary history mixed with the historical reality about this possibly Jewish character in Portugal, who was a fisherman and who may have found America. Who knows? Sean says pyramid coordinates same as the number of the speed of light. Louis says, what's a pyramid? Pyramidist, fire in the middle. So Greek people say it's exactly fire in the middle. It's a pyre. So here's the thing. When you make a campfire, do you notice the wood burns? So in Tasmania, the only way to burn wood was to stack it like a pyre, stack the wood like that, and stack it like a pyramid, and then it burns the best. So we had to do it that way on a wet night. And in order to get warm, in order to go to sleep at a campsite, you had to start the fire to get warm to go to sleep, and then the temperatures dropped well below zero. We were camping on a mountain. And that was never doing that again. Imagine tossing and turning all night because the atmosphere is trying to steal warmth out of you. It feels like you're being bitten by the atmosphere and it's trying to take everything you've got. What are we talking about? Yeah. So pyramid in the Britannica, I found the 1972 Encyclopedia Britannica. It says the earliest mention of pyramid is from 1500 BC, an Egyptian geometry text. And it says it's the highest point of any building is the pyramid. So that's what it means. And a pyramid is a building with a high point. So that's what pyramid means. Fire in the middle, it doesn't matter because that's Greeks. But what happens if Greeks founded Egyptian civilization? Then there might be something to that. Well, who knows? Who knows? Greeks were ruling Egypt for centuries, maybe for millennia. Maybe the Mycenaeans formed a kingdom there. Why were there so many blondes in ancient Egypt? Blonde people. What's going on with that? Sublunacy says, I can't imagine the emptiness you feel, Karen. I don't know who you're talking to there. Sublunacy also says, a pyramid is a sacrificial pedestal, perhaps. Colin O says it's 5:55 a.m. in New Jersey. Time to fall back asleep to your new videos. Works every time. Oh, thank you, Colin. That's nice. Alex says just enjoying listening. Louis says I'm petrified. Nice. We're talking about stone, I think. Scrack says I really want to go to the Great Pyramid. The sarcophagus is meant to have healing abilities. I want to put it to the test. I hope you get the opportunity. Look, as soon as the lockdown's over, just head straight there. There'll be no one there. And I recommend you go at 8 a.m. or even earlier and just bribe the people to get in there and say, you know, here's 50 American bucks to them. It's a month's wages. They'll let you in like that. Everyone does it. And you can lie in there all night if you want, I guess. River Smith says white dove. Sean says opals don't form instantly. Another dork says, I wouldn't say that about yourself, mate. Another dork. I live in a little near a little standing stone in Leicester, England. It was seen as a place of justice and law up until the early 1900s. Quite cool. They would take dirt from around the stone to the local court. Cool. So a stone is sacred and a stone sanctifies things. So the stone of Scone was underneath the throne of England and then into a castle, and there were several of these stones. So in London, somewhere there is a Brutus stone, which was a sacred stone around the time from 1000 BC, at the time of Brutus, who was some Italian who conquered England back in the day, possibly related to the Romans or possibly a Welsh person. So stones are very sacred to the Beaker people civilization back in the day. Louis says history repeats itself. Let's go back up. Where were we? Yeah. Sublunacy, well done, Charles. Scratch says the roads are full of potholes. I've wrecked suspension more than once because of driving through Bath. Really? Columbus does in French. Daniel says the Swan Bay Island, who now the army have moved on to, which is sus to me. Cool. Andy says, Charles, are you familiar with a Victorian named Peter Mungo, Jupp, and his interest in mega tsunami that hit the Australian south coast in the past? Instant petrification, inland chevrons, etc. Thoughts? Yeah. So we have close to the southern coast in Western Victoria, huge lakes, and I believe they're salt lakes, aren't they? And how did they get there? Are they from an ancient tsunami? I guess that might be part of his theory. I've heard tentatively about this theory, but I don't know the name of that person. And that's quite an interesting proposal. I've seen some weird things. You can tell there's been great geological upheaval just by looking at the geology, especially in that part of Victoria. So yeah, something happened. Manan says there was an ancient civilization in Antarctica. Was there an ancient civilization? Are the ruins buried under ice? What race of humans lived there? I'm really not a fan of that theory, Manan, because you're looking at the coldest part of the world, and the only way for that theory to be true is if there's been a pole shift. And the only thing we can ever do with a pole shift is make suggestions. There's still only a tiny percent of the world believing in that. So Louis says the sun emits warm light and the moon emits a cool light. That's pretty cool how it does that, actually. It's like nature's giving us a balance. Louis says Cairo is weather in Greek. And interestingly, doesn't it also mean Mars in Greek? I heard that one as well. Joe says, do you believe in a God, or are we here by accident? Love your channel. Thank you, Joe. Who, me? I believe in the Joker God. The Joker God is mankind's oldest god from 60,000 years, apparently. I read that in the Oxford Dictionary of Mythology. And I note that the biggest eruption ever happened 60,000 years ago as well, at Toba. So there's something. So he's a volcanic god, and I believe in this god because this god is joking around with everyone. You see evidence of this all the time. It's like he's making everything into a joke. Life is a tragic comedy. It's quite interesting to see how everything unfolds as if it's for someone's entertainment and amusement. And the ancient Greeks had these ideas as well. It's as if things unfold for someone's amusement. It's quite weird. Crawlface says, Charles, for what it's worth, your ideas about DNA and how it may behave similar to the classic objectives of organisms, such as preservation, colonization, diversity, etc., is absolutely brilliant. Thank you. I want to write a book about evolution to show that evolution is actually something that was developed long before Earth. It could not have been developed on Earth because its purpose is to colonize Earth. Its purpose is to increase biomass, to increase the size of species. That's clearly what's going on. And so it must have been developed long before Earth. Part of the evidence that it wasn't developed on Earth is we don't see the precursors to DNA on Earth. We should see the mechanistic precursors. We should see The ancestors of DNA on Earth, they're not here. DNA came here from somewhere else and it colonized the planet. Ricky Spence, in my opinion, we had a crustal pole shift in Antarctica. It was tropical before the flood. Daniel says, thoughts on seeing shooting stars when people die. I seem to see them when someone I know dies and after they die. Not sitting there waiting for them, just looking up randomly and right away I see one. Okay, you're not alone. People see doves, lights above the graves of their loved ones after they die. This is an unexplained, weird UFO type phenomena. What is happening? I don't know. It's very strange and odd. UFOs can resemble birds. They can resemble lights. Maybe after someone dies, you're more emotional, you're more tuned in, and the brain's acting differently, so you can actually see these things unfold, and the brain's receptive to them. Noobster says the stories of the North American Obiway natives and Peruvian Shipibos are telling. Beautiful stories about the beginnings of the world. Nice. Louis says sarcophagus means something like flesh-eating or something in Greek. Yeah, literally. Sarco. So sarcasm is eating. So sarcasm is, if you're being sarcastic, you're essentially kind of abusing someone. So you're eating away at them slowly. And phagus is, sarco is flesh and phagus is, but sarcasm comes from the word sarcophagus, not sarco alone. So Louis says what happened? It disappeared. Even the Americans have Plymouth Rock, another famous stone. Manan says, was the Garden of Eden just a laboratory, enclosed observatory habitat created by the advanced people? Was Satan a scientist who betrayed the other alien scientist by giving Adam Eve the knowledge? Yeah. Satan was the scientist who betrayed the other scientists, yes. That's what the ancient texts are trying to say. They even say he crashed to Earth and he was buried. So it's like the spaceship fell on top of him, and that's why there's a pyramid on top of him or a mountain on top of him. Jennifer says Antarctica might not have been ice covered if the CO2 levels were far higher and the climate was significantly warmer. It might have had only mountain glaciers, so ancient Civ, they're not impossible. Ricky says, bakshish it's called. Greasing of palms will get you everywhere in Egypt, even climb the boogers. Unless you're a cute blonde, then it's free. I've got pictures of my kids on marble pharaohs. I think if those guys see a blonde, they're going to faint and start convulsing and frothing at the mouth because they're just going to be in total shock and awe. Louis, on Google Earth, there are street-level images on Antarctica with a lot of stone that appears to have melted and later solidified. Thomas Theriault says, good morning from Eastern Canada. Our part of the world is turning to face the sun now. Nice. Badbug says, do you think we are still being genetically manipulated and there are hybrids among us? No, you're getting ahead of the ball here. You're saying we're not just being genetically engineered, but we're still being genetically manipulated. But by who? Who do you mean? Oh my God, I never knew sarcasm. Thank you. Andy says, could you elaborate on the eagle and that gives Solomon the shamir? And in relation to Tolkien's eagles and his impressive interest in ancient myth and languages finish. Yeah, so there's another flying creature, the Volund. Volund is basically Sauron, or Saruman, and Volund lives on an island. He is framed, and then he is forced to make rings. First he's selling rings, then he's forced to make them for the king. He's imprisoned, and one day he gets sick of this. He flies away. He grows wings and flies away. Loki can do this as well. He runs the forge. It's quite interesting. So Lunacy, about the limestone again. I'm surrounded by limestone here. I have never seen anything like the Sphinx here. Not even close. Not in a million years. I don't know. 200K? More likely. Asahoyu, Lapis Philosophorum, says, Satan is a woman. Apollo 20 Mona Lisa. Nice. Will this says, were the ropes strong enough? Manan says that's why Adam and Eve were deposed from the garden by the scientists as failed subjects, like we humans disposed nuclear waste. Curtis says, Sublunacy says Karen Lilith. So what is? Apparently Eve, didn't she have an evil twin called Lilith? And Sublunacy is referring to Lilith as a Karen. So there's Karen. It's so funny. It's like you name someone, you know exactly what they're like. So this name Karen. Everyone knows that Karen is slightly more interested in the doings of other people than she should be. And suddenly everyone's mass realized this at the same time by some 100 monkey effect. It's strange. Anyway, Curtis, Satan comes from the worship of Saturn, Saturnalia. Louis says, a century ago, according to archived newspapers, the Garden of Eden was in Mesopotamia. Ricky says, sarcasm, biting, not eating. Yeah, it's biting. You don't want to eat your victim. You just want them to be bitten for thousands of years. C. Tiddo says, Doc, much love from Liverpool, UK. Louis says, mastication is chewing. KUS says, martial law in America. What do you guys think? Is martial law coming to America? Sure. Look, you know what? They need a bit of martial law, don't they? Damn. What's going on over there? I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say stuff like that. Someone's going to say something now. So, is there a rope trapped under every block? That would be cool to know, wouldn't it? That get the carbon analysis tools out and check if there's carbon there. Put the stain in there. Check if there's carbon. Ben's Monkey Science says, "How do I send you money, Charlie?" I think you just click that thing up there. Just that $sign. I'm not quite sure how it works, or down the bottom or something. Thanks. Jennifer Jarvis says, well, since the US finally admitted UAPs exist in the last month, it makes me wonder how they are preparing people for possibly new tech. Ben's Monkey Science says, does the sticker send you money? I don't know. I've never actually used it before. I've never used one. Jennifer Jarvis says, well, since the US finally admitted UAPs exist in the last month, it makes me wonder what they are preparing people for, possibly new tech. What's a UAP? Is that an unidentified aerial something? Len Lennox says, just watched your last video. Big up the geocentric massive. Thank you. Ricky says, I wore a sleeveless stressing to McDonald's and had to go walk back in and get my sweater because they were foaming at the mouth wall. Yeah. Interesting. Sublunacy is really, really excited by someone called Karen. I don't know who she is, but obviously she's made a big impression. KUS says, send super chats, people. Manan says, who mined the continent of Australia thousands of... it's moved. Manan says, who mined the continent of Australia thousands of years ago? You keep talking about it. So apparently some Indians actually say, don't they, that Australia was, I think, nuked in ancient times, and they tested a weapon. So in the ancient Hindu texts, they tested their weapon somewhere. So the weapon is the world destroyer weapon, and they tested the world destroyer weapon somewhere in Australia. And the people who say ancient technology can't exist are utterly ignoring all those Hindu texts which talk about weapons that can destroy the world, like nuclear weapons and anti-missile missiles that they mention. There ain't no anti-missile missiles in the Stone Age world, or in the Iron Age world, or in the Bronze Age world, or in today's world, unless you're using technology. Andy says on Satan, what about the whole story of Apollyon and possibly others being interned inside the earth somewhere in some form of prison? That sounds like a version of Loki. I don't know who Apollyon is. I'll have to look that up. That's interesting. Lapis Phosphorus says Lucifer, the Lightbringer, who won the war in heaven to save humanity. Indeed. Daniel says, I don't think it's as important to learn about where we came from, is where we are going, and we should try to learn about. I wonder how old my soul may be. I don't think a soul ever dies. Beautiful statement. That's poetry. Asahoyu says, Satan, Lucifer, Lilith, Lucia. It seems, yeah, indeed. Indeed, sir. Yes, I agree. Yeah. So James says 3:17 a.m. Cali time. Go to bed, Aussie. Don't you know how late it is? Lol. Hey, 8:19 p.m. here. 8:19 p.m. here. Melbourne time. Yes. So Ricky says, I believe they're imprisoned in an electromagnetic prison. Another dimension, when they screw with Kern, they can unlock it. I like the way you think. That's a really nice way of thinking. Louis says, I'm in LA. That's in California, which is in America. Thanks for the clarification. I would never have guessed. I'm just kidding. And we are currently under a curfew until 5 in the morning. It's 3:17 a.m. You're under a curfew. So okay, I'll explain what happened over here. There were no curfews at all. There's no curfews. You're allowed to visit relatives, but you're not allowed to stay overnight. You're not allowed to sleep. But visiting's fine, and there was never a curfew. However, they started at the start of this thing. They started arresting people in national parks. One woman was walking by herself in the wilderness somewhere, and she was arrested. And she said, "It's a free country. What are you doing?" They've since stopped doing that. They realized she was probably not going to infect anyone, except maybe a few trees, a few snails, maybe. Snails might have started coughing, and they've since relaxed it. There's hardly any cases of the virus here. It's all fine. It's all dandy, and they've kind of eradicated it basically, and it's all loosening up slowly. And I hope it loosens up in America as well. The sun's come out. It'll disinfect. It'll kill this pathogen, and everything will be back to normal eventually, and it'll become harmless. So, Bogus Hype says America has been under martial law since JFK. Martial law just means suppression of normal law. The military occupation they display in movies is impossible given the massive area the US is made of. Yeah. Jennifer says, yes, UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, martial law possible. Yes, I think so. If a second wave of the virus is a result of these protests and continued and spreading unrest. James says, Northern or Southern Cali. John says, Hindu texts talk about the giant gingers from Atlantis. Manan says, yes, in Mahabharata, nukes are mentioned and used with accurate description. Absolutely agree. So this is one of the funny things. So in the West, it's easy for Westerners to dismiss and say, this never happened. There were no ancient nukes. Ancient nukes were never used as weapons. And I know this because I don't see it happening right now. Therefore, it could never have happened, right? What, you think the Stone Age people had nukes? Ha! Prove it. You can't. Therefore, they didn't, right? But in India, they have no choice but to believe this because the ancient texts, which are the basis of the Hinduism religion, which is basically this must never be repeated kind of religion. This must never happen again. This war must never happen again. By learning about it for thousands of years, it's in the texts. These people cannot have known about these things. It's there. It's written about. There was an ancient civilization. The Great Pyramids tend to prove that, don't they? Jennifer says, I'm in upstate NY. We're out in farmlands, so we're not seeing any of the unrest or much for viral problems. Louis says, Pandora was married to Prometheus' brother. Jennifer Jarvis says, the curfew is to do with the protests and civil unrest ongoing in major cities in the US. Louis says the curfew was issued last night due to rioting that is currently underway in DTLA. That's downtown Los Angeles. Sublunacy. Karen virus. How's that for an angle? You can say that again. Chancellor Merkelism says every neighborhood in Texas is an armed camp. No rioting over here. Oh, yeah, Texas, you have the castle law, and castle law seems like a nice law. So long as you're not on the wrong end of it, it's a perfect law. Nice. Manan says, also, you said the Aborigines people have some ancient stories orally passed down about our origin, like the rainbow dragon. Do you know some of their stories since you live in Aussie? So all the Aboriginal stories are based, I don't know the stories, but they're all based on humans morphing out of animals. So there were two birds. One of them was naughty. it became a human, or humans morphing into animals. There were two brothers, and it's like the humans were there first, and then the animals were created out of the humans. Actually, I think that's the way it was. So what happened is you have two brothers. One of them kills the other brother. As punishment, he becomes a crow, and he's always going, why am I a crow? That's one Aboriginal story. And it's like, it's basically, Aboriginal stories are basically genetic engineering and evolution in action. It's quite interesting. So there you go. Also, they have origin stories from the stars as well. So the earliest, do you remember that bloke who I interviewed from Queensland, Steve Strong? He said he interviewed every single Aboriginal tribe all around Australia, and the one story, they all have different stories, but the one story they share is that have always been on Earth for millions of years. Aliens tried to invade us. They came from above. We defeated them with superior technology. And then there was an environmental problem. All the trees were being cut down. And but we kept cutting down those trees. And Australia, if you look at Australia today, there is, in fact, an environmental problem because it's a very arid, weird land, and we don't know why. And no one talks about why. We just accept it. Okay, we accept it. It's because it's Australia, right? Because it's hot there, right? But other places which are hot don't look like this. Who knows? Maybe it's just due to the fact that we're not connected by land to more exotic, wetter climates, and it's just very dry in the middle. So, yeah. So Reinhard, hello, Reinhard. Hello, sir. I'm late to the party as usual, so I hope I don't ask questions that have already been covered. Daniel says, oh, thanks, Ben Monkey. Cheers. Nice. Daniel says, oh, I have to go up. Where is it? The Dreamtime Serpent. Reinhard von Horst says, I was hoping to ask you about the 1,000-ton singing statues of Egypt. I have a theory they sing because they are hollow. What are your thoughts? So, these statues weren't they around Aswan, and they were demolished, and they were shifted to a new location that they no longer sing. And what's happening is, because they're not positioned properly, there was wind blowing through a valley, and the wind went through the statue, and it hummed. So they're basically in a different, aren't they? Basically in a different location, and that's why they've stopped singing. And you're saying they sing because they're hollow. I guess, you know what? That's a good argument for geopolymer, isn't it? That they're some artificial construction, and they've been hollowed out. They're not the solid rock. Ricky says Apollo is another name. Oh, it's another name. I didn't realize Apollo fell to Earth like the fallen astronaut. Yeah. John Smith says the Nazis and the British destroyed Hindu temples because they contained diagrams of Vimanas. I never heard that one before. That's interesting. Bogus Hype says the virus is just an excuse to suspend economic activity. There's always new viruses with varying degrees of infection. You can't differentiate this virus from any other normal viral disease. And he says, sorry, Abaddon, Napoleon, angel of destruction. Abaddon is used with reference to a bottomless pit in Hebrew texts, some type of prison. Joe says, imagine if the crystals stolen from temple still being used. Louis says Europeans have the same ancient origin stories, but they are written in different languages, and any English translation has been watered down and given a Disney-like face. Bogus says, if the TV didn't make a big deal about the virus, it would have come and gone without any notice. Ricky says, and I believe they're all just versions of the same name. Oh, what happened? It's moved. Louis says two brothers, like the twin brothers who founded Rome. Basically, yeah. John says, watch that. Johnny says, doesn't rain much. Jennifer says, the Aboriginal stories are fascinating. What if chimera research was going back then and things like centaurs were real? Yeah, indeed. Ricky says, physicists looked at the Vimanas and decided they would have worked as well. That's one hell of an imagination. Rolling eyes. Jafuli Porches, indeed, you have to treat with a bit of skepticism whenever someone makes a big fat claim and then they stick it in the media. What was their motive? The fact the claim was true, or the fact they want to be in the media? Or yeah, lots of these things in the media are just fake. Jafuli says, talking of stars, The demo 2 is going to dock in something like an hour. What do you think about this, Chucky? Are you talking about Elon Musk's latest creation? I reckon he's amazing, Elon Musk. I'm very interested in what he's doing. He's selling all his houses because he's just realized that he lives at Tesla. Why the hell does he need all those houses? You buy 2 houses, you can only enjoy them half as much. You have 3 houses, you can only enjoy each house a third as much. You have 7 houses like him, you can only enjoy each. I'm not very good at maths, but what? That's what, 12% or something like that. Damn, there you go. And he's realized that, and he said, what am I doing? What have I been doing with my life? I'm not doing what I want to do. Yeah. So, yeah. Ricky said, Daniel says, what if cat really spelled dog? Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Must be late over there. If I said something like that, they'd say, Charles, you are losing. You are going off the rails. You have been doing this for weeks, getting madder and madder. They've been saying that since I started the channel. Just I'm having fun. Ricky says, think many of those things everyone calls myths had much more basis in reality than most want to even think about. Louis XVII says, Sydney, Australia, Cape Town, South Africa, Buenos Aires, Argentina, and Santiago, Chile are all on the line of latitude of 33 degrees south. So it looked like the spin of the Earth was determining how the continents fell when they were laid out. Maybe. Or the electrical spin of the Earth underneath, created through the internal sun, has attracted rocks, magnetic rocks or whatever, to a certain location. Remember that video I made earlier, this video? You spin the plasma ball in an electric drill, and you can see it separating out to Tropic of Capricorn, Tropic of Cancer, equator, the plasma inside the Earth. It's interesting. He's driving the weather on the surface through capacitance. Does Charles watch cartoons? No. But I loved when I was little to watch every cartoon, everyone. And I'm not one of these adults who watches The Simpsons and Family Guy. I don't like that. It's because you're not watching reality. You're watching what some dork's drawn, and it's not even funny. Sorry, maybe it is. Sorry. I shouldn't say things like that because people are going to say, no, they might get upset. So, Manan says, did some dinosaurs survive the asteroid? Also, where did that asteroid? Oh, well, dinosaurs are still living, and they certainly survived until recent times. They are the dragons. Encyclopedia Britannica 1971, at the start of the article, says dinosaurs seem to have existed. Dragons seem to be a myth about dinosaurs without anyone having seen a dragon, described a dragon, ever seen a dinosaur. And I thought to myself, well, how the hell do you know, Mr. Editor Professor who wrote this article in 1971? How the hell do you know that? You don't know that. You don't know that. So it looks like dinosaurs were around till recently. And now, this is really cool. They're being carbon dated. 2012, they were carbon dated. And it's been found, these dinosaurs, 10,000 years old, 6,000 years old, got all the flesh on them. They're recent. So Jafuli says, I don't know. Yeah, okay, yeah. So Ricky says, and I'll finish up in about 10 minutes, people. So Ricky says, think many of those things everyone calls myths had much more basis in reality than most of what people want to think about. Daniel says, what if... nice, okay. Ricky says the expanding Earth would have an effect on gravity, I'm sure. So, yeah, people say that huge dinosaurs, huge fragile insects with funny-looking wings and fragile things would have been crushed to death under current gravity conditions. So the Earth was once much smaller. How did these massive, heavy creatures fly with heavier bones, possibly? How did they? What did they do? Was gravity less? And there's a point to that. Also, the oxygen level was different. The oxygen was actually higher in the dinosaur period than today, and that's conventional. We learned about that in geology class. Ricky says, if growing Earth holds any water, then gravity is not generated by mass, an electrical phenomenon, maybe. Scratch says, apparently, if many of the huge dinos were alive today, their legs couldn't support their own weight. So the only way to overcome that is gravity. Would also explain how huge megaliths were moved. Oh, I like that. I like that. That's good thinking. Jafuli says, yes, Chucky, you knew. They just put men into space. What do you think the future might be using the past as a reference? Haha. Oh, yeah. So can you imagine? So the ancient civilization, we're talking about ancient nuclear weapons from before the Stone Age. So what followed the lost civilization? The Stone Age. What's our future? The Stone Age. We might go into space. We might get to Pluto. The Stone Age, doesn't matter. The Stone Age is coming. Look how this virus overtook us. What's at the end of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? That amazing British series from 79, 78. That was the best time in Britain, I think. I'm not British, but I if I was around in Britain, I wish I lived in that time, watching TV and those amazing shows and the Stone Age. He was living with the hominids, and he said, and he worked out that 42 is the meaning of life, and he didn't know what 42 meant. 42 was just a reference to something else. It wasn't any meaning. It was just a index definition. Yeah. Index definition. Joe said, people with boring ass personalities get confused. Manan says, in Hinduism, Vimanas and nukes are mentioned everywhere. Is it possible the tech of the ancient humans survived and was concentrated in Egypt and India? You said it, pal, definitely. Ricky says, dinosaurs would not be able to walk without gravity. That's correct. Scratch says, gravity is a result of magnetism. It's an acceleration, not a force. Ricky Spence says, everything is bigger, though. Louis says Elon Musk named his most recent son XAE-A12. Yeah, you know what? He's lost the plot. Why would you do that to someone? Why would you do that to someone? Jennifer says, I don't think gravity and electric universe theory have to be exclusive. Both could exist. Scratch says, Terry Fandango says, not even Rick and Morty. Sean O.C. says, Matt Hermangiants also is on degree 33. Asahoyu says, latest guess, the Earth is a supernova core that just missed it for a bit to become a black hole. Wowie. I don't know about that, mate. Sublunacy says, that's a good point. The blob and swirl, the torus, it's an arrangement, continents. Ricky says, I'm just saying as it's typically described, gravity. Joe says, royal dragon feeders in China back in the day, lol. Bogus Height says, Rick and Morty is extremely sophisticated. Louis says, dinosaur equals formidable lizard. Bogus Hype says, he's been going for 2 hours. Yeah, I'll finish soon. Scratch says, could you call it magnetic attraction? But that's not what it really is. It's accelerating towards the plane of inertia, which every magnetic field has. Louis the 17th says, helicopter equals helix pterodactyl. I have to think about that one. Crawface says, wow, about the dinosaurs. I didn't know these recent finds, although I have heard the consideration of it. Yeah, so what happened was, this bloke who's a slight creationist has been going around trying to get these bones tested, and lots of labs say, one, it's the C14 technique doesn't work on dinosaurs because it only goes for about 50,000 years or so. So any results you get aren't going to be accurate results. And we know, by the way, the dinosaurs are 50 million years old, and it would embarrass our laboratory if we tried. But nevertheless, they got them tested, and they test to recent. Especially and I made a video saying they especially test around 30,000 years ago to 10,000 years ago, which is the time apparently when catastrophes happened on planet Earth. So that means the dinosaurs were wiped out in these recent catastrophes, which wiped out the super civilization. Terry Fandango says, you need a high IQ to watch Rick and Morty. Louis 17th says, some animals never stop growing in size during their lifetime. Scratch says, I know, as you cannot have a magnetic field without electricity of some sort. Sublunacy says, agreed. Sublunacy says, Figure out how elephants froze to death. If you want to Karen spiral, oh, we don't want to go there. No, we don't want to go there. No, sorry. Jafuli says, ha ha ha. The Stone Age. Yes, Chucky, I laughed out loud. Teriyaki says, take away 2 to 3 kilometer levels of water, lower lands, much denser, oxygen and megafauna like dinosaurs. Ricky says, 4:30 a.m. sleep. What's that? Wow. Louis says, do you know how carbon dating works? It's absolutely ridiculous to ever take carbon dating serious. I don't know the details myself, but I know it's based on an arbitrary set of considerations and it's changed over time. For example, Stonehenge used to carbon date to 1800 BC. They said it was 1800, 2000 BC. Now it's 2500 BC because they've changed it. Before that, in the 60s, it was 1500 BC or so. Because they hadn't calibrated it based on some unknown events that happened, I think around 6,000 years ago, where the carbon ratio of carbon-14 in the atmosphere altered, and they had to take that into consideration. They didn't know about that before, and they found that happen in the bristle cone pine tree rings. They found something happened, and they had to change and recalibrate based on those tree rings. So yeah, I have to say it's a dodgy system, but it kind of works. And archaeologists use it. I mean, archaeologists aren't the greatest, but they use it. Subliminity says, agreed, demanding a profile of radiation. Curtis says Elon is an insane technocrat. He kind of is a bit weird. He's kind of, he's not normal. But then again, that's probably a good thing. So Ricky says, your stream, you can say whatever you want. It's a Mel Brooks. Once it's said, it's going to be king. Hell yeah. Richard Van Holst, serious question. Do you have a picture of Zaki Hawass on your dashboard? No, I do not. I honestly don't mind him too much. He's arrogant. He's nasty and mean. But I've met quite a few archaeologists, and he's not the worst of the bunch. Jafuli Puches, ha! Asahoyu says, gravity is vibration. Bigger, denser object vibrates less. Smaller objects try to set motion in the bigger directions if motion. Ricky says, Raven, he has 2. Louis says, legally, Elon Musk's son is named XAEAX11 because California law doesn't allow names with numbers. Will this says, grease under every block to aid removal of the rope. Sublunacy says, lots of carbons. Check out carbon 60. Ben's monkey science says, Charlie, best guess to go when we die. Dinosaurs, cool. I don't know where we go when we die, but I think our spirit kind of gets a bit disembodied and we float around for a bit. And apparently, according to ancient tradition, which Eric von Daniken picked up on, and he thinks this is what happens. We've coalesce into a ball of energy with all the other energies. This is probably all the orbs coalescing together, and then we go off somewhere, probably into another world or something, and into another body. Yeah, Louis the 17th, helicopter spiral helix, copter wing feather in Greek like pterodactyl. Manan says, is there a possibility that recent dinosaurs were clones of the real ancient dinosaurs created by the advanced ancient humans like the Jurassic Park movies? That's why they are 6,000 years old. Yeah, I mentioned that theory in an earlier video, and I'm going to suggest that in the upcoming book that I'm going to release soon. Proof of the Gods. Scratch, the mammoths froze solid in close to 2 hours. How is it possible to freeze a mammoth in that time frame? That's a 5-ton mammal. Yeah. Something catastrophic occasionally happens to the Earth, rarely. And that's the evidence of that. And if you can find what that is, that would be amazing. That would be really amazing. Ricky says the atmosphere being ripped open and cold air coming in from space. Sublunacy says Elon's dad was a commie. Asahoyu says Elon is a smart cookie. I agree, he's a smart cookie. He is the smartest cookie in the cookie jar. Ziggy Dan, hey Ziggy Dan, says Scratch, it takes 10 hours in an industrial freezer nowadays. Scratch says, you in my head? John says, using the age of rock is how they date the dinosaurs. What about extreme human antiquity? Michael Cremo has given accounts of human remains in those rock layers that are as old as dinosaurs. That's the thing. I think, and you might not agree, that they're not even dating the rocks correctly. I think what they're finding in the rocks is the building materials. They're not dating the rock. They're building what the rock's made, dating what the rock's made of, the radiation. And rock has been mushed up and disenfragmented and electrolyzed away and ablated and eroded away and fragmented into dust and repounded back and glued up together again. What are they dating with this radiation? What are they really dating? Chancellor Merkelism says, good show, old boy. On a lighter note, what kind of fishing do you do over there? I don't know anything about fishing, sorry. But people fish everywhere. It's very big. It's very big. On the bay, they'll travel out to a shallow on the boat. Everywhere. Fishing is huge here. They do everything that they do in America here. Yep. Right. Oh, and our fish, it's rainbow trout in the rivers, blue grenadier in the oceans around New Zealand as well. And those are our fish. Blue grenadier is a very dinosaur-like looking fish. It's a bit odd. Looks like a sword. John Hayes says, using the age of rocks is how they date the dinosaurs. What about Extreme Human Antiquity? Michael Cremo has given accounts of human remains in the rock layers that are old. Oh, we read that. I'll finish up in 1 minute, people. So what else? Bogus Hype says, I saw on the History Channel years ago there was a Mesopotamian script that was untranslatable. Is that true? Not sure. Sublinsky says, common equals pedestals of shoulders and handouts for the weak. Ricky says, I'm telepathic. The great minds just think alike. Scratch. You can tell how fast meat freezes because of the ice crystal's size. Taking too long to freeze would destroy the meat. Ricky says they were flash frozen. Asahoyu Philosophium. Nazi UFO tech, they create centrifugal forces, very dense mercury, vibrational gravity lesser than vibration of the Earth. Louis says solid to liquid to gas is related to gravity. Excellent, excellent. So, people, I want to thank you for watching, and we'll do this again soon. I'm actually going to make this quite regular. It'll be at least every week or even double 2 a week. I don't know what time it will be. I should set a time for it, probably a weekly time. I'll probably set a weekly time so that the Americans can join in and the Europeans, because I know it's a bad time for America at the moment. Everyone's asleep. I want them to be here. So, yeah, but thank you, everyone, for joining in. It's really cool. George says, sup, you bald duck. Hello, George. Yeah, so, it's, we had a great time. Mel Gibson says, Louis says Mel Gibson's father was a Jeopardy champion. Interesting. Very cool. Ricky says, can't get on Facebook right now. I want to say hi, Chuck. Hi. Then I kind of got sucked in. Okay. So, yeah. L Train, I'm awake in America. Hello. River Train, it's been great. Great stream, Chuck. Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun. We'll do this twice a week. Yeah. Core Face has been a lot of fun. Excellent, excellent. Reinhard von Host. Danke, meine. Yes, peace from the UK as always. Oh, you're in the UK. Headlong Gaming. Another live chat. Hello, everyone. Sorry, I'm just finishing up, but we'll be back in a few days. Curtis, peace out, Robert. So, peace out, everyone. It's been great. Love it. I will check out some of the things that have been said, and cheerio. Bye-bye.